My childhood was pretty basic. If anything, it was worse than basic. But everything changed one day and I ended up becoming a billionaire. But more on that later. Make sure you stay tuned till the end of the video to find out how all of that craziness happened. But before I go on, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more crazy stories. So my childhood was way below average. I was an orphan, you see. My parents had abandoned me at the orphanage. My caretaker told me they probably couldn't care for me. They loved me, but they just felt I was better off at the orphanage. But I always felt abandoned, like they didn't want me or didn't need me. I know that wasn't true, but that's just how I felt. Anyway, my childhood was full of empty stomachs and bullies. I was a big growing girl, and the orphanage never seemed to have enough money to feed my growing body. I was always hungry, and my bully didn't help. Her name was Tammy, and she always loved picking on me. Even though she was smaller than me and less strong, I never fought back because that just wasn't in my nature. I would rather endure the pain of Tammy picking on me and stealing things from me rather than face the actual conflict. Tammy used to tell such mean things to me, like, "Your parents never loved you," or "You'll never accomplish your dreams." Even though Tammy was a fool and an overall horrible person, I guess I had to thank her somewhat, because without her, I may never have become a billionaire. You see, I was pretty average in all genres. I wasn't especially academic, so it wasn't like I could pursue a dream in medicine or something. I wasn't artistic either, so that idea was out the window. I was a little sporty, but not anything that I could seriously pursue. So when Tammy said, "You'll never accomplish your dreams," I was determined to prove her wrong. No, I thought, I will find a dream that I can accomplish. Just you wait, Tammy. And that I did. It all started when our caretaker took us to the movies. An Indiana Jones movie was playing, and I was really excited to watch it. And sure enough, it was as amazing as I had imagined it to be. It was so cool watching Indiana Jones escape the booby traps and win the treasure. I especially loved his hat. It was in that moment that I realized that my dream was to become an adventurer. When I told my orphan friends, they all laughed at me. Even my caretaker smiled a bit. When we got home from the movies, Tammy pulled me aside and whispered in my ear, "Don't be a fool, Jessica. An adventurer? Seriously? That will never happen." Well, that just made me want to prove her wrong even more. I started researching everything and anything that had to do with Indiana Jones. I became obsessed. Then I started to research the adventures that had taken place in modern times. Real adventures with real treasure. In Egypt, someone had found a tomb after following an ancient map. In Indonesia, a pile of jewels and gold had been discovered at the bottom of a shipwreck. I also started to research what kind of tools and skills such an adventurer would need. Patience, intelligence, working well under pressure. I tried to perfect those skills so I could become the best adventurer out there. Years passed and it was time for me to move out of the orphanage home and get my own life and my own job. Well, I still wanted to be an adventurer, but I understood that you couldn't exactly pay bills by adventuring, so I decided to get a temporary job as a waitress at a nearby diner. I could barely afford to pay my rent for my tiny apartment, so my empty stomach was even worse than when I had lived at the orphanage. It was empty practically all the time, but I managed to survive. In the meantime, I tried to find out where my first adventure would be. I started researching all sorts of myths and mysteries, of ancient tales that people have found interest in today. I tried not to find the famous ones, otherwise it would be hard for me to compete with other adventurers looking to find the treasure. In the end, I found the perfect adventure. Allow me to explain it to you now. This is the great mystery of the Prince's Palace. It took place somewhere in South America, in a jungle. There was a famed prince called Ataki, and he lived in a huge palace. People said that he was quite selfish and rude and didn't treat his people with kindness, but with fear. Then, as karma for his sins, legends said an earthquake struck his palace, and his palace, along with the prince inside, sunk into the ground and became lost forever. However, many people believed the palace still existed, just underground. And of course, as Prince Ataki was a wealthy man, there would be a ton of treasure inside his palace too. There was a map with the general location where the prince's palace was believed to be hidden, but no one was sure. I thought this was the perfect adventure for me. I wasn't too bothered about finding the treasure because the adventure itself was going to be so fun. After several years of planning and saving money, I managed to book a flight to South Africa and head towards the jungle. I followed the map that I found online, and before long, I was at the location where the Prince's Palace was supposed to be. I looked everywhere. I even brought a shovel to see if I could dig my way underground. But after a few hours of searching, nothing came up. But then the next morning, I was walking along the jungle looking for some water when I spotted the opening of a cave. I walked through and found a huge maze of pathways and tunnels leading to who knew where. I decided to explore it, and I brought a piece of chalk with me to mark my way so I didn't get lost. I started to walk through the tunnels, and then I found a doorway. It had Prince Ataki's label on it. I had found the Prince's Palace. When I entered, lo and behold, there was a huge pile of treasure right at the throne. But what was kind of creepy was the skeleton that sat on top of the throne. I peered at it closely and I guessed that this must be the body of Prince Ataki. I didn't stay long though. I gathered up as much of the treasure as I could, but as soon as I had filled my bag, the entire place started to shake. The Prince's Palace is going under again, I thought. There was still a lot of gold and treasure left, but I felt I already had enough in my bag to last me a lifetime. I ran as fast as I could and managed to get out of there before I was buried underground. When I returned to the surface, my heart was pounding, but my mind was dancing in glee. I was rich! I peered in my bag to look at all the treasure, and I almost cried in happiness. I was rich! No more late-night shifts at work. No more moldy walls and cold showers. No more empty stomachs. I had enough money to last me for the rest of my life. After that, I immediately sold my treasure and made newspaper headlines. I was now known as Jessica Jones, much like Indiana Jones. I felt so proud. In total, the treasure I had found was worth billions of dollars. That's right, billions. Crazy, right? I settled into my new rich life very nicely. I moved out of my tiny, dirty apartment and bought a mansion overlooking the ocean. I didn't buy a mansion that was too big, because otherwise it would get quite lonely being there all by myself. I bought my dream car, a green Jeep, and I even bought a golden retriever to keep me company at home. I had become something of a celebrity. Everyone knew me, and it was quite strange going to the supermarket and having people come over to get a signature from the great Jessica Jones. I was actually considering changing my last name to Jones. Tammy, my old childhood bully, never contacted me to congratulate me, unlike my other orphan friends. But one day I got a message where she asked for a bit of money from me. She said that she was sorry for how she treated me when she was younger. I ignored the message. That's what you deserve, Tammy, I thought. Meanwhile, I donated a ton of money to the orphanage I had grown up in, as well as to an organization that helped orphans live a life full of happiness, not sadness like I had. Things were pretty good. I was still quite lonely, but I guess things were fine. I couldn't complain after all. This was every adventurer's dream. But then something very strange happened. I got a call from one of my managers that said a couple had come forward claiming to be my parents. I couldn't believe it. My parents were back? How had they found me? Well, they must have seen my face on the news and recognized me. Or maybe they recognized my name, Jessica, and the orphanage I had come from. My manager asked me if I wanted to see them. I didn't know what to do. My parents had abandoned me and left me on my own for over 20 years. Now they had come back right when I had hit that jackpot and now had tons of money. Was it a coincidence? Did they really want to see me or just my money? I told the manager to organize a meeting, and before long I was face to face with my parents. They looked just like me. The same blonde hair, same blue eyes. They were really nice, and I immediately liked them. It annoyed me, but I was really fond of them, and I even asked them over for dinner. Their names were Adam and Samantha. I chose not to call them Mom and Dad. It was too early for that, and I still didn't really know how I felt about them. "You've got a really nice place, honey," said Samantha, and she gave me a sweet smile. "How much did it cost you to buy this?" asked Adam. "Oh, a few million," I replied. I was starting to get suspicious. Were they here for my money or not? It would be terrible to find out my parents were gold diggers, but pretty soon we had dinner, and they didn't ask any more questions about my money. In fact, we had a really good conversation, and we even stayed up really late just chatting. We were catching up on lost years, I realized. The clock struck 12, and I told them to stay over and sleep here. They accepted, and that night Samantha came into my bedroom to wish me good night. She tucked me into bed, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "I'm sorry, darling. We never should have given you up for adoption. We were so poor we thought we had no choice. I love you." I hesitated, but then I said, "I love you too." That night, I slept well. I really started to feel like we could be a family again. From that point on, my parents visited me every week, and they stayed at my mansion most of the time. Once I called Samantha Mom, and I noticed her eyes welled up with tears of joy. I was so happy too. Finally, the family I had always dreamed of having. Ever since I was a baby, I wanted this, to have my parents back. For months, we lived together, and things were great. But then, like the good things, they come to an end. I was asleep one night when I heard a noise, a truck or something outside. I woke up and opened my door, but it was locked. I managed to climb out my window. I am an adventurer after all. And what I saw made my heart drop. My parents were stealing my stuff. They had a huge truck, and they were pulling my furniture, my jewelry, even my iPad into the back of the truck. "What are you doing?" I asked in alarm. Adam looked up and his face sank. "Oh, Jessica, sweetie, we can explain." "You're stealing from me. I knew it. You just wanted my money." Now Samantha spoke up. "Come on, Jessica. You have so much to spare. Can't you just give a little to your poor parents?" I was so angry. I immediately called the police, and they soon came and arrested my parents. I guess my parents were gold diggers all along. I was so sad to learn this, but I'm choosing to forget them. I'm better off without them.